How do I perfectly describe the feeling of losing my mind? In my head, I was still trapped in a stranger's trunk, nose to nose with the man I murdered. I told him everything I wanted to say, everything I continuously swallowed down as a coward. In my head, I was human, and so was he. His eyes were lit up with moonlight, terrifying, and yet somehow, still so beautiful, so warm, so comforting. I found myself leaning closer until I could feel his breath tickling my face. Brown flecks bled through irises drowned with her light, and in that confusing moment between reality and delusion, I wanted him to stay like that, forever. Rowan blew in my face, snapping me out of it. Don't you have anything else to stare at? I found my voice barely croak. You're 2 inches away from my face, in case you haven't noticed. We're tied up in the back of a stranger's trunk. My options are pretty limited. I could practically see his patience withering with every twitch of his mouth. Well, turn around. Stop staring at me. It's weird. I'm staring at you because the moon is swimming. I had to swallow sour barf creeping up my throat. I couldn't stop myself slurring my words. In your eyes. He averted his gaze. Thanks. It wasn't a compliment. You sound like a bad romance book. He snorted. You are a bad romance book, I shot back. The man possessed by the fucking moon. No thanks to you. I burst out laughing. Oh, now there were 2 Rowans. Being drugged was fun. You think you've been through the worst of it, and then I was seeing double, which meant 2 pairs of moonlit eyes staring daggers at me. Oh, I put the moon in your eyes? He pulled a face. In a way, yeah. I nodded, very aware that I was still drugged and slurring my words. Can I touch it? Rowan made a snorting sound. Touch what? Moonlight, I said. I can't reach it. He raised a brow. You're tied up. Blinking rapidly, I tried to distinguish the 2 Rowans dancing in front of me. Oh yeah, I said. But you're tied up too. His lips curved into a smile he was trying to hide. Congrats for stating the obvious. You're an asshole, I grumbled. Thanks. To my surprise, he shuffled closer, bumping his head against mine. Is this close enough? I don't think I realized his voice was too light, almost melodic. His breath tickled my cheek. For a disorienting moment, my mind jerked back to sobriety, and I was no longer in control of my body. I don't think he was either. Moving closer to me was definitely not a Rowan thing. During our post-drugged rendition of Amore, he was actively trying to twist around to avoid looking me in the eyes. But now, he wasn't blinking, and his expression was a little too vacant. Not enough glaring, but he wasn't the only one. Suddenly, I wanted to get closer to the moonlight, so close I could savor it, feeling it against my own skin. If only I knew that every part of him, mind, body, and soul, now voice, was oozing with her. I should have seen it in his skin splintering apart, seeping moonlight, beads of her dripping down his neck and entangled in his eyes. I blinked, trying to pull myself out of the moonlit haze, but it bathed me, drowning me. His gaze, far too empty and wrong, yet captivating, held me in a vice grip. I wasn't sure why I leaned forward, awkwardly pressing my cheek against his, and I kissed him. I don't know why he kissed back, hesitant at first, but something pulled him deeper. When her melody grazed the back of my thoughts, I sensed her entwined between us, twisting and contorting our bones into her playthings. Rowan jerked away, his half-lidded gaze struggling to drink me in. He blinked once, twice, as she slowly drew him from her cruel trance. That, he squeezed his eyes shut in an attempt to block her out. That wasn't me. I could only nod, still drunk and dizzy on a cocktail of moonlight and sedatives. I know. Rowan groaned, tipping onto his back. He spluttered out a laugh. Okay, Now she's just fucking with us. Before I could respond, my vision twisted and I was yanked back violently, ghostly fingers coiling around my spine. And like a snapped bungee cord, I was wrenched from the memory. Delusion was comforting, wrapped up in a splintered memory I didn't think was still part of me. Reality, however, was fucking painful. Reality was no longer existing as someone I recognized, a physical being with a name and an identity and a reason and a voice. I couldn't remember when I last had skin and flesh and blood, organs that pounded and pulsated and made me feel alive. I existed as an outline, a nameless lump of flesh that grows and regrows with a single purpose. I was a stomach. I was their stomach. When reality hit me, I was painfully aware of beads of red dripping down my face, filling my mouth. I could feel everything. And every time their teeth pricked into my skin and ripped into me, their slimy fingers scooping out my insides while I stared dead-eyed at the ceiling, a little more of me splintered. I could sense my mind falling apart, fragmenting into memories I did and didn't want. I told myself I would die this time and stay dead. I had to stay dead. But when death spat me out once again, and I was carried in front of them once again, barely an outline, my mind splintered. I was dropped onto the ground, and I had no legs to run with, no arms to fight back. The ground didn't feel real, and neither did my own skin, my own flesh and blood and bones stitching back together. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Burying my static flesh into cold concrete, I was partially aware of footsteps. Worn red Converse stopped directly in front of me. Another pair of shoes followed, bright red heels, and then white sneakers. I didn't yet have a mouth to scream with, or a right eye to fully drink in my surroundings. It took 5 minutes for my flesh to grow back, and I counted every second, waiting for their claw-like nails to grasp into me once again, and tear into me. Once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6. I hated how gentle they were at first. They wanted to give me hope, to ignite my sludgy mess of a mind back to awareness. I felt their fingers tiptoeing across my chest and stomach, claw-like nails ripping into me slowly. I could sense their manic smiles, too greedy to wait for my flesh to come back. They were already tearing it from my bones and stuffing it into their faces, intensified snarls and chitters growing louder and louder as they dug deeper and deeper, and my left eye found the ceiling. Olivia House's basement had been converted into a throne room. Darkness enveloped me with the sickening sound of my neck being snapped, and I was back again, this time on my stomach. My nerve endings weren't even formed yet, and I still shivered under his touch as he ran his fingers down my static spine. His index was too harsh, prodding into every bare bone that was barely formed. Prod, prod, prodding. How do I perfectly describe the feeling of losing my mind? How do I perfectly describe the feeling of losing my mind? How do I perfectly describe the feeling of losing my mind? Abigail Matheson's party was boring to say the least. I wasn't even sure how I ended up there, squeezed between 2 strangers, trying to choke down the alcoholic beverage in my cup. It was supposed to be vodka and lemonade, or maybe sparkling lemonade. Whatever it was, it tasted bad. Bitter. Bitter with each sip making me feel more nauseous. The rotting smell in the kitchen wasn't helping. Did Abigail have a decomposing animal she was hiding? I thought I could pretend to enjoy the drink some frat boy handed me, but I was too sober to enjoy it. Dumping the drink in the kitchen sink, I filled it with soda, catching my roommate's eye in the crowd. Imogen Prairie was like a human golden retriever. The first thing I saw was her blonde ponytail. Imogen was laughing with a group of girls, and when the girls weren't looking, she not so subtly angrily motioned for me to have fun, or at least act like it. Imogen's goal was to showcase her roommate to her friends, like, "Oh, hey guys, they're not that weird. Look." Cut to me crouched in the kitchen trying to find a phone charger. In my defense, I wasn't the one who earned our group the title of weird. That was Rowan, who made sure to act as unhinged as possible at every event we were invited to, so we couldn't get invited back. At laser tag last year, he was kicked out for getting a little too into it. He was only joking around, and in his defense, he did have ADHD, and I would definitely describe Rowan as a hyperactive puppy when he was excited. But he wasn't the only offender. When I'm drunk, I overshare. And I have definitely overshared to the wrong people. Cass, our resident stoner, has said his fair of weird shit when he's high. The problem was, students talk and exaggerate. What had been innocent mistakes and drunk talk quickly became, they did what? The rumor mill had been churning, and apparently, Imogen Prairie's roommates were psychopaths. Rowan was now an ex-juvie convict after stabbing a guy in the eye. Kaz was a drug dealer with ties to the mafia, and I had been kicked out of my high school for trying to burn it down. Props to my classmates for originality. So, to set the record straight, Imogen, promptly ignoring our protest, dragged us to her classmates' party, determined to prove everyone wrong. So, I pasted a smile on and greeted Imogen's friends, reminding them, "No, I'm not actually an arsonist." "So, you're Nina, right?" One girl spoke with a permanent head tilt, like it was going to fall off at any moment. Maybe she wanted to be endearing, but I was leaning more towards neck injury. I found it vaguely distracting, sipping my soda and trying not to reach forward and physically straighten her head myself. The girl introduced herself as Maya, her lips curved around the rim of her cup. I had to keep reminding myself that we were in our early 20s. And yet, this girl looked and acted like a high schooler. She had that smile that was nice enough, but she definitely spoke shit about me behind my back. "Aren't you the girl that set a fire in your old school?" I noticed Imogen's expression darken significantly. When it came to her roommates, Imogen was a self-proclaimed mama bear. Even when we told her we could fight our own battles, before she could open her mouth, I got there first. "Nin," I corrected the girl with a smile. "That's just a rumor." Maya nodded slowly. "So, what does Nin stand for?" "It stands for Nin." Maya tilted her head even further, and something slimy crept its way up my throat. "But Nin doesn't make any sense," she said. "Are you one of those girls who, base their whole personality on their name?" Before I could reply, Maya walked away, and I was thankfully left with my roommate. "I love your friends," I said, a bitter edge to my tone, only for her to playfully shove me. "They're fine," Imogen laughed. "You're just bad at talking to people." "Uh-huh. So you're saying neck injury girl actually liked me?" Imogen let out an explosive laugh. "I'm sorry, what injury girl?" We rounded the drinks table, sampling cocktails. I tried a bright green one and immediately spat it out. "That's disgusting." Imogen shoved me. "It's pure vodka. It's supposed to be disgusting." With Imogen by my side, I felt a little better. "Your classmates are too old to be acting like mean girls." I nudged her, trying another cocktail. Fruity, but still bitter. I went to grab a soda from the refrigerator. However, there was just one singular bottle of Coke. "There's literally just Coke in this girl's refrigerator," I said. My gaze for some reason stuck to it. The milky white light illuminating my face sent my heart into my throat. I reached forward to grab the bottle before retracting, my stomach twisting. There was that rotting smell again. This time, it was stronger, thick in the back of my nose. I think I said something along the lines of, "What is that smell?" But I didn't remember the words leaving my mouth. Instead, the sink was choking me now, a physical presence wrapping around my throat. Imogen didn't seem to notice the smell, humming to the song playing on the Alexa. I don't even think she heard me. I was aware I was stumbling back before warm arms caught me. "Are you all right?" Imogen, with a bright smile, she pulled me back to the table, her fingers entangling with mine. It didn't make sense to me why Emmy couldn't smell it, though the thought was quick to leave my mind, already bleeding into obscurity. Emmy rocked back and forth on her heels, sipping her drink. Maya is, a little judgy, but she's nice. She's so nice. You said nice 3 times, I pointed out. Imogen did a drunken twirl. Yes, well, she is nice. Or because you can't think of anything else to say because she's a bitch? Then ignore Maya. She's like that with everyone. Imogen shouted over the music. Just have fun. She tried to dance with me, and I let her swing me around, my mind blurring. The sound of the crowd and music coming together in a single symphony. Imogen was a good dancer, while I kind of flailed. Imogen handed me a cup. Try this, she shouted over a song. For a brief moment, her eyes seemed to catch the light, an eerie white glow igniting in her pupils. I reached out for the cup, and it bled away as quick as it came. I downed the drink, and to my surprise, the drink was good. It was like sour apple cider. When the song was over, my best friend was trying to straighten my hair with her fingers, prodding at my face. After a quick glance at the crowd coming in and out of the kitchen to grab drinks, I was yet to see roommates number 3 and 4. Where are the guys? I asked. Imogen blinked, placing her drink down to focus on my hairstyle. She pulled it into a pony, then a French twist. Rowan and Kaz? No, Amy, our other roommates. Imogen mentioned that she couldn't hear me. What? Someone had definitely cranked up the Alexa. I tried again, screaming over the bass. No, our other roommates. I have zero idea. Imogen almost resembled my mother, worried eyes and twisted lips. The music was so loud, she yanked me into the hallway, already trying to remodel my hair. The hallway was quieter. When she got close, that smell was back. It was close, stagnant in the air, choking my nose and throat. Imogen. The realization sent phantom fingers tiptoeing down my spine. The smell was emanating from my best friend. She didn't seem to notice, more interested in cleaning up my face. I opened my mouth to question it, but as quick as the smell had come, it was gone. You've messed up your eyeliner, she sighed, planting her hands on her hips. Nan, you look like a panda. I spent 2 hours doing your makeup and your hair, and you ruined it. I couldn't resist a smile, shaking away the feeling of unease twisting my gut. Do I at least look like a cute panda? Her eyes lit up, smile pricking her lips. Oh, she said. You want to look cute? Imogen leaned close, and the smell was gone, replaced by her usual sweet flowery scent. Is it for who I think it is? How old are you again? Old enough, she said. If you don't ask him out, I'm gonna ask the man for you. You wouldn't. She flashed me a grin before dancing back into the crowd. You have an hour. I shooed her away with a laugh, retreating back to the kitchen to track down that smell. It couldn't be Imogen, right? I went back to the refrigerator, only to spot a familiar face in the kitchen. As usual, he was as social as ever, downing shots to a chorus of cheers. AJ Carrington was the crush I'd invented to silence Imogen. According to her, there had to be someone I was interested in, but I wasn't into anyone. So, the idea of my best friend asking out a random guy on my behalf, a guy I just made up one day to stop her yapping, was mortifying. Still, I found myself mesmerized by how many shots the guy could drink before something sharp hit me in the cheek. I picked a particularly sharp chip from my shoulder. Doritos. Hey, Nin. Roommate number 3 was sitting on the counter, halfway through a bag of Doritos. Rowan had a pretentious charm, emphasized by his dramatic trench coat, which felt out of place with his usual calm band t-shirt and jeans. A pair of Ray-Bans sat loosely atop his unruly brown curls, adding to his infuriatingly cool demeanor. His teasing smile caught my eye, throwing another Dorito into his mouth, swinging his legs nonchalantly. Did you make a good impression? Impression? Rowan nodded, pouring the bag of chips in his mouth. Did Imogen's friend like you? Not really. His smile widened. Same. I think I accidentally convinced some guy that I joined a cult. Rowan leaned back lazily, crossing his legs. Hey, have you seen Kaz? I frowned, struggling to register his words. Kaz? He jumped off the counter, making his way over and flicking me on the forehead. Kaz, he said, drawing out the Z. The guy you live with? Oh. He nodded. Yes, that Kaz. Did he by chance maybe go outside? Outside? Yes, outside. The opposite of inside. I haven't seen him, I managed to say, my words catching in my throat while he grabbed my hand and pulled me from the kitchen, through the hallway, and right up to the front door. When Rowan abruptly stopped, something inside me snapped, and I found myself instinctively tugging on his arm. Rowan stood there, perfectly still, his gaze fixed on the sky. The moon cast an eerie glow across the horizon, reflected in my roommate's eyes. He remained motionless, and the panic, an unbearable suffocating pressure, tightened around my throat. That smell, it was pungent, a sickening rotting stink choking me once again. For a moment, I was aware of something warm and slick on my palms, sticking my hair to my neck. I wiped my hands on my dress, but they were clean. When I ran my fingers through my hair, every strand was in place. So why did I have phantom hands painted in red? My breaths grew staggered, and suddenly, it was hard to swallow. Found him. Rowan's voice cut through my thoughts, pulling me back to reality. I blinked, and the sensation was gone. My hands were dry. Rowan was right. Kaz, roommate number 4, was cross-legged in the front yard, his arms draped around Sam. Go away, Kaz said in a sing-song and warning, pulling Sam closer. Rowan sighed, leaning against the door. He's alright home, but I kinda don't want to spoil his moment, you know? His voice collapsed into white noise in my head. Instinctively, my gaze found the ground, where a spilled can of beer should be, but the only beer was in Kaz's hands, his head tipped onto Sam's shoulder. Nin? Rowan was frowning at me, his head cocked to the side. I had never realized how brown his eyes were, an orangey chestnut brown. Whoa, are you good? I couldn't speak, my throat choked with questions I didn't want to ask. Hey, Rowan's voice was surprisingly soft. Do you need a glass of water? His lips formed a small smile. Or maybe a drink? I can get you a soda. Instead of questioning my sanity, I took his hand and pulled him back to the party. Imogen slid past us, dumping 2 shots into our hands. I expected Rowan to pull away and say something like, I'm not listening to pop music. Why can't you, insert band you've never heard of, be on your playlist? But to my surprise, he reluctantly stumbled onto the dance floor, shooting me dagger eyes. I'm not dancing, he said while dancing. I was surprised how many drinks it took. 7, for him to abandon his pretentious facade for one night and actually enjoy himself. The night blurred into one confusing mass of brilliant colors, leaving me struggling to climb a staircase. My hand wrapped around my roommate's wrist. I wasn't sure how drunk I was. Drunk enough to fail to remember the Golden Bolivia house rule. No fraternizing, which meant no fucking, no friends with benefits, no orgies, no excuses. Another drunken kiss. My wandering hands finding his shirt collar and pulling him up the last stair, however, sealed the deal. Stumbling into Abigail's bedroom, that smell hit me again, freezing me in place. But this time, I knew what it was. There were bodies strewn across the floor, glistening inwards spilling across the cream carpet. Townspeople. I saw familiar faces. Poppy and her roommates, classmates I'd passed in the hallways. Rowan didn't move. I dropped to my knees, my body no longer mine, my hands scooping up slimy inwards and stuffing them into my mouth, until I was choking, grasping at warm flesh and tearing it from the bone. But it was never enough. I could feel my mouth, my stomach, until I was bulging. I was never satisfied, never full. It was then that I realized my hands were dripping scarlet, and my hair was glued to the back of my neck. I could sense Rowan towering over me. When I stopped eating, spitting out chunks of red, his foot came down, forcing my head into the floor. His voice became hers, and through contorting visions, the brown of his eyes was gone, drowned in blood-drenched moonlight. I did eat, because I was their stomach. Something snapped inside me, reality contorting back to focus. Color flickered to monochrome black and white, back to what I was running away from. Abigail's bedroom bled away, and I was on my hands and knees in Bolivia House's basement, trapped inside a circle of moonlight. My body felt stiff and wrong and new, barely formed yet, static stretching into an outline. I was dazedly watching my flesh creep back onto my bones when white light flooded my eyes. I spat a fleshy piece of skin out of my mouth, my own stomach contracting. Above me, there she was, poking through the skylight. "Nin?" The whisper cut through me, but I didn't dare lift my head. I had come to realize that the kings and queen liked movement. Movement meant I would be hunted down, a game they liked to play with their stomach. The game started in the woods, and I had one goal: get back to Bolivia House alive. I never won the game. How do I perfectly describe the feeling of losing my mind? "Nin." This time, his voice was a whimper, one that jerked my head up. He was playing games again. It was his favorite pastime, playing the games she whispered into his head, growing more and more frenzied, excited, drowning in the euphoria she filled him with. But this wasn't the voice I was used to. I was used to a melody she entangled on his tongue, a sing-song giggle that had transformed him from a 23-year-old man into a murderous psychopath who had turned the town into a wasteland. I ducked my head further, resisting the urge to block my ears. I could feel her light dripping in and out of my skull, already entangling my thoughts. "Nin!" It was that cry of my name, that sharp exhalation of breath that forced my head up. I was given strict instructions when entering the Bolivia House basement, now converted into a throne room. I could not talk to them. If I did, I faced punishment. When I lifted my head, I was greeted by the exact same scene I was used to. 3 thrones made up of human flesh and bone that was still alive, still writhing underneath them. 2 of the 3 were empty. Imogen and Kaz were elsewhere, most likely forcefully converting captured students into sacrificing their shadows. I was staring dazedly at a slimy piece of intestine wrapped around the base of Imogen's throne, when a sharp exhalation of breath drew my gaze to him. Rowan Beck was sitting stiff, his arms by his sides, back straightened, eyes forward, almost like she was molding his body into submission. 6 months since I lost him. 6 months since he staggered to a halt in the college reception and was drawn back to Bolivia House and crowned a ruler of the new world. Time was not cruel to the king drowned in moonlight. Rowan, a royal against his will, bore the weight of a crown of human bone. Jagged edges forced into his brow. Beads of thick red dried down his temples and cheeks. So much blood, and yet so much beauty. Moonlight replacing skin, spider webbing across his face and neck. There were still splinters of him bleeding through. Thick brown hair that was shorter, less unruly, tucked under jagged bones slicing into the flesh of his forehead. He was wearing the exact same clothes from 6 months ago. A worn t-shirt and jeans, both of which were barely recognizable, clinging to his withering frame. For the king who feasted on me every day, every hour, sometimes every second, with no mercy, no hint of sympathy or humanity. His own body resembled a skeleton, gaunt cheeks and emaciated bones. The king was starving. Tipping my head back, my eyes finding the moon sitting comfortably in the sky, part of me wondered if there was a reason why she stripped shadows, why the king was starving. It hit me when I dared stand up, risking a step towards him, that Rowan was trembling. It could have been another game, another way to twist my mind and fill me with complete unbridled despair. But somehow, I fell for whatever this game was. Somehow, I straightened to my feet and took a step towards him. He was paralyzed. His shuddery breaths and unseeing eyes tells me everything I needed to know. I didn't speak. My body was moving for me, my hands cupping and cradling his cheeks, and tracing the line of his forehead, filling along the indentions cutting into his skin. Rowan's eyes, still polluted with her light, barely penetrated mine, finding oblivion instead, before his half-lidded gaze found mine, a cocktail of agony and fear beginning to ignite in his expression. His finger started to slowly prick at his side, clenching and unclenching into a fist. "Get it? Off me." Rowan's entire body jolted, and he shook his head, once, twice, in an attempt to force the stubborn crown clinging to him. I found my own voice, cupping his cheeks and forcing him to look at me. He did, blinking rapidly, but I didn't say anything, because there was nothing to say. All I could do was force him to keep looking at me, while I tightened my fingers around the crown of bone. That, when I pricked my finger on one of the splints, was entangled, made up of moonlight. "Get it off me," he said again, this time through gritted teeth. I had never seen him so vulnerable, so small, his eyes filling with tears. "Please." His sob was explosive and painful. "Please, just fucking get it off me." "Look at me," I told him, cradling his face. He did, his eyes wide and frightened. "I'm going to get it off of you, but you need to stay calm, all right?" I pulled at it, but it didn't move, staying stubbornly stuck. When I tried slipping my fingers through the sharp prongs, filling along the bridge of his scalp, I realized the king's crown wasn't glued to his head. Something sour and slimy wound its way up my throat. I was aware I was stumbling back, my hands shaking. "I can't," I managed to choke out through a cry. Rowan blinked himself out of his trance, and this time, he clawed at it himself, before his hands fell to his sides. "Fuck," he hissed. "Where are Kaz and Imogen?" I don't know." "Okay." He dragged his fingernails down his face. "Okay. I've got sort of a plan. Maybe." His eyes found mine, and I could still see the distrust in them, his eyes flicking back and forth between the stairs and me, like he was waiting for me to leave him again. "Kaz and Imogen are here somewhere. We grab them, we get the fuck out of here, and get out of town." Rowan jumped to his unsteady feet, still trying to claw off his crown, when I stumbled back, narrowly avoiding a semicircle of light creeping towards my feet. I caught a sliver of moonlight bathing the left side of his face, its sharp luminescence like tendrils twitching towards his eyes. "Sit down," the voice was commanding, and I immediately dropped to my knees. My mind was used to her voice, used to following her orders. Rowan didn't move, staying stubbornly still. The cult woman appeared on the stairs, and to my surprise, she was older, ancient, skin and bones hobbling down each step. 6 months had aged this woman 50 years, which didn't make sense. I caught Rowan's eyes, the slightest twitch of his lips. He was definitely convinced we could easily take her. However, there was this one thing stopping both of us. "I said sit down," the cult woman snapped. Figures followed her, new and old followers. I caught familiar faces in the crowd, students who had been brainwashed into bowing down to this cult. Rowan didn't respond, but he did shy away from the moonlight. I watched it bleed into his eyes, prickling on his skin, like it was a living thing. His head tipped back, eyes finding the moon herself. "I'm going home," he told the cult, his voice still clinging to her, still possessed, but they were Rowan's words. "Thanks for the offer, but I'm not interested in being a king or whatever. You guys can find another brainwashed freak. I'm done." He gestured for me to follow him, but I couldn't move. My gaze flitting to two new figures among the crowd. Rowan saw them too, his eyes darkening. What the fuck? Kaz and Imogen, standing side by side, crowns of bone adorning their heads. Kaz wore a smile, his eyes devoid of life. It's okay, man, he murmured. I let her inside my head. He tapped his temple. I could see visible scarring on his scalp. Whatever had been done to Kaz was forceful, and she showed me the light. Kaz, are you fucking serious? The first thing I thought was, that's a nice red dress, Imogen. But then I realized her dress was shredded human flesh clinging to her. Compared to Rowan, they were fed, their skin set alight with moonlight, their eyes drowned, bathing, suffocating, but reveling in her. They were beautiful, perfect embodiments of the moon herself. Imogen's blonde curls had been savagely cut, while Kaz's were overgrown over his eyes. But looking closer, their skin was rippling, like it was moving, like it was alive, shifting. I thought back to the cult woman's words. Kaz and Imogen acted like a hive mind, their cavernous eyes flicking to me, and then Rowan, in sync. Sit down, the cult woman said again, and this time, Rowan did slump back into his throne. Young Rowan. The cult woman stepped forward, and so did her brainwashed followers. The rebellious king who refuses his throne, and is the only royal who is yet to embrace her gifts. Her lips formed a small smile, though her eyes were dark. You remind me of our ancestors. If I remember correctly, you accepted your crown, did you not? Rowan rolled his eyes. Yes, because I was in a fucked up trance, he said. You fucked with my head so I wouldn't fight back. She pursed her lips. You know she likes to play with humans. She told you that. The woman tilted her head. Remember? Oh, Rowan. You did so many things under her control. And you enjoyed it. You were her plaything. Her twisted human soldier. I'm not a plaything, Rowan said through a forced smile. I said I'm done, and I'm done. The only reason why Kaz and Imogen are like that because you filled their heads with the fucking moon. Something in her expression crumbled. Do not use profanity under her light. Rowan straightened up. Or what? What are you gonna do? You're a cult of werewolf-worshipping freaks. Why do you need me? He gestured to the other members of the cult. Do you know how many of your followers would die to be king? When she didn't speak, he stood again, once again trying to pull off his crown. The moon filled the room, as if in protest, and Rowan squeezed his eyes shut. Restrain him, the cult woman said with a sigh. However, Rowan was ready, easily pulling off the head of one man and ripping the spine straight through a woman's back when the cult members surrounded him. But the cult woman wasn't talking to her followers. Kaz Delacruz didn't restrain his roommate. Rowan, he said it like an order. Do what she says. He stepped forward, grabbing Rowan by the neck, and tore his head off, ripping it off from the stub of his spine, and squeezing the pulpy remnants between claw-like nails. Kaz didn't even blink, stepping back in stride with Imogen. The cult woman was barely phased, her gaze already on the ground, where a new outline was forming, Rowan's body stitching itself back together. Already, her guards were scooping his fraying static form into their arms. Take the reluctant king upstairs. Perhaps further methods of persuasion will bring him to his senses. Her cruel eyes found mine, and she came over in 2 heel clacks. I apologize. The king is not in the greatest of moods. I didn't respond, my gut lurching. She inclined her head. Do you by any chance know where your children are? Her words caught me off guard, cutting through my thoughts. I was still staring at Rowan's headless torso on the ground. I waited for it to fade like our bodies usually did, but it was still there in a steaming pool of scarlet. The cult woman's voice was delayed, and I felt my body jolt, my mind working to process them. I opened my mouth to speak when her bony fingers wrapped around my arm, yanking me up. They've run away from home. Her voice was almost mocking. "The poor darlings. They must be so scared." She led me back to the stairs, her fingers gripping my shoulder. "If they come knocking on your door, please send them home, Nin. They must come home to their favorite Grammy." I didn't reply, stumbling back up the stairs, my heart in my throat. The cult woman's voice wouldn't fully register, and when it did, I pushed it away, right to the back of my mind. It was when I rounded the top of the stairs that I realized I wasn't inside Bolivia House. I was in the town hall, surrounded by her followers. The cult had worked hard to turn the town into a Bolivia House replica. I never had someone bow in front of me, grasping my legs and begging me to take his outline. But there's a first for everything. When I left the town hall, the full devastation of the cult hit me. The sky was pitch black. Homes had been transformed into places of sacrifice. The college was a skeleton of itself, a rumored solace of survivors unaffected by the moon's curse. When I reached the doors, however, a four-legged thing was feasting on the corpse of my language professor. Further down the road, I glimpsed them. Humans without shadows. There were no streetlights, but my eyes had adjusted to the dark. Humans turned beasts hiding in endless dark, awaiting fresh meat. Screams followed me all the way home. A woman trying to dart into a car, only to be torn to shreds. I watched her blood splatter the windshield and quickened my pace. Bolivia House was still standing, and when I took out the key and forced it into the lock, twisting it, I allowed myself to break. Stepping inside, everything was exactly the way we left it. Rowan's comic books were piled up on the floor, a Monopoly board still hanging stagnant from our last game. The kitchen smelled of rotten decay, my unfinished bowl of cereal still sitting on the table. I remembered the morning before I lost them. Imogen had finally come out of her room, pasting a smile on her face. She was dancing around the kitchen to the radio, pulling a reluctant Kaz into a dance. She tried to pull me in too, but I escaped into the lounge, where Rowan was curled up in his pajamas, halfway through a comic book. I grabbed my bag, still wary around him. He didn't look up from his comic book. "Where are you going?" "The library. You guys are acting like children," I said, playing with my keys. "What are you reading?" "Boys." "Boys?" He nodded. "Yep. Is it good?" He shrugged. "It used to be pretty niche until the show came out. Now everyone's talking about it. And they haven't even read the comics." Rowan tipped his head back, exaggerating a groan. "They just think it's like a fucking anti-Marvel show." I started towards the door, already tuning him out. "Nin, can you check on the window?" Kaz yelled from the kitchen. "Is it werewolf-proof?" I caught Rowan's expression darken. "We're not werewolves," he yelled back. There was a pause before Kaz shot back. "Nin, can you make sure the window is moon-afflicted creature-proof?" I wasn't expecting Rowan to continue the conversation. "Do you want to watch it?" I paused, playing with my eyes. "The book you're reading?" "Sure. Tomorrow?" I saw the slightest smile creep across his mouth. "I'll set it up on my laptop." He went back to reading. "Have fun at the library." I shook away the memory before it could really take its toll. It was when I stepped upstairs that I tripped over the first body. It was me. A mutilated vision of me. My spine snapped in half. Further up the stairs, another me. This time, nothing but a skeletal husk. I was everywhere. Thousands of visions of me, ripped apart and rotting, sitting in pools of writhing red maggots. When I forced my legs upstairs, my mind was whirring. These bodies were supposed to disappear when I died. So why are they still here? When I died in Rowan's car, I watched my body disappear, while I was copied back into existence. Entering my own room, I was filled with pain I thought I no longer had. When I was ripped apart and brought back together as their stomach, I lost my pain, my ability to feel completely. But seeing my old life in front of me, college textbooks and clothes piled on the floor, my laptop and my books, Photos of the three of us stuck to my wall, my stomach contorted, my throat swelling up with tears. One photo in particular, however, caught my eye. It sat on my dresser, a photo in a white shell-shaped frame. The girl in the photo was me. I wasn't smiling, and my eyes were half-lidded, dazedly staring into the camera. My mouth was smeared with red, and in my arms, a tiny bundle of pale blue, a baby. The frame slipped out of my hands, a scream clawing in my chest. Before I could stop myself, I was on my knees, grasping for the frame. There was no fucking way. I was on my feet, making it for the door. But before I could reach it, something, a frying pan, slammed into the back of my skull. When I hit the ground, my head spinning around and around, the ceiling glitched. Footsteps, familiar voices echoing back and forth. Did you get her? Of course I got her. Did you see my swing? You missed her, twice. So did you. I felt gentle fingers twining through strands of my hair. It's okay, Nin. Another familiar voice whispered. When I opened my eyes, black spots dancing across my vision. 3 figures stood over me. It wasn't just the ceiling that was glitching. They were too. Imogen Prairie leaned close, her hair tickling my cheek. I would have believed her if a sacrificial knife wasn't protruding from her skull. Everything is going to be okay.